And I've hit the
This
button,
is the people,
bitches.
no.
He's done it. He's done
Hit
it.
the button.
Can we get? Yeah.
What?
No. I thought. Yeah.
I'll get into that. There you go.
You're
That's
very.
it. Far away.
No, you're very talented on the old mixing desk.
This was
Stuart.
my life.
Is it?
This was my life for
I
15
bet it was a
years.
wee bit bigger than that.
Is
It
it?
was a wee bit bigger.
Is it better? Is it a better life than working on the websites?
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
he did then.
It's a different life.
It's a different life.
It's a different
Yeah.
life.
And he is still kind of a lighting director because he changes the colours of the lights in his own
Oh,
house.
Sam
for
loves
Sam.
that when he comes
Loves
home.
that.
Just
When he's
Little-
steaming. Yeah.
Sends out a warning shot to let her know that he's off the train.
Nearly home, princess.
the sharks coming home.
We've got to talk about the shark.
We do need to-
I said, Stuart's got a new name. The Shark. Interestingly, how did he get that name, Julie?
I think he gave it to himself.
What a prick. The Shark.
He's like a poor man's Prof G.
Yeah, he's a shit Prof G. The dog. There we are. That's you down to size. Shark. More like the fucking tadpole. Come on.
Maybe a wee dolphin.
Professor Tad.
Well, that's a way to start, isn't it? It was just...
Keep that in.
Oh, that's not going anywhere. You can't recreate that.
Magic.
You can't recreate that. Well, I don't even know. If I'm
Just
gonna
play the
start.
fucking music.
Welcome to the Good Roundup. Good as a brand consultancy in the UK. I'm not going to lie, I'm a wee bit shaken up after the abuse. I just got a bit called the Shark, which I never called myself the Shark. I was just saying I was
Totally
like a shark.
did.
Yes, you
I
did.
was saying I was like a shark.
You
because
said,
I've always got to move
I
you
forward.
did.
am a fucking shark.
And I decided to quite like being called shark. Anyway,
Imagine giving yourself a nickname.
good.
Anyway.
Good as brand consultancy in the UK. I'm here with Chris Lumsden
Not the Shark. Hello.
and Julie Murdoch.
Also not a shark. Hello.
And my name is Stuart Steele, and I am the shark.
Brilliant.
So,
That's been quite sweary already, and we're not even in the pod yet.
well, it's been a while since we've done one of these, so we're kind of getting to get
know, we're
there.
all very
I know we're all very excited. There's a lot of excitement in the air. And today's topic is one that is very close to Mr. Lumsden's heart. Arguably his favourite topic of all, because you do love it. We're going to be talking about brand architecture. Now, and it is your favourite, isn't it, Chris?
It's the one I enjoy the most out of our services or offerings, the work we do in this space. And I've written quite a lot of stuff on it. I'm no expert, but I've learned a bit. And I do like it.
I would
enjoy
say
it.
you are an expert, Chris, hence why we're decided to do a
amazed at-
podcast about it.
I'm amazed at how little understood it is as a thing.
Mm-hmm. So, which is a good point. So, before we kind of get into how little understood it is, let's have a chat. Can you just describe to us exactly what you see brand architecture as?
I knew you were. Well, so I suppose it can be many different things, but really it's just about the system that's deployed to help companies organize brands and subsections of brands and how they relate to each other and the wider organization, I think.
And can you give an example of these
Well,
structures?
and I suppose, well, there are three very well publicized, talked about structures, which when we come on to, but it's also just, the other aspect that's little understood, I think, or what plays into that is the role that products and services have and how they're named and how they plug into the overall brand is crucial. It's not just about structures and logos.
right.
I think it's really important to say it's much deeper than that. And the effects of it are felt much further down the organization. But in terms of the structures, there are classically, you get the branded house where everything is kind of pivots off the main brand.
So, an example of that would be Virgin.
FedEx. FedEx is always a good one.
Well, FedEx or classically BMW or something like
All
that.
right, okay.
It's just very clean and everything's a BMW, and then the products are numbers and letters.
Right.
I like that. That's very clean. And I've written a couple of pieces about how in B2B that's kind of where the action is, because ultimately it's cheaper. And then you get the house of brands, which is the complete opposite of that. So that's like a Diageo or a Unilever, where they're effectively a holding company, and then all the brands have their own look and feel and names, and
they're all independent of one another.
Yeah, independent. And then thirdly, there's a thing called the endorsed brand, which is, I would say, it's probably a bit more like Virgin or the BBC or something like that, where they've all got they all link to the main brand graphically and names, but they've all got a sense of their own unique characteristics as well. So, and then there are blended versions of all of that stuff. And the way that you organize your business and the architecture structure you deploy there's no right or wrong answers. And that's the bit I like about this. So that, in B2B, as I say, I think, the sort of branded house approach is often the chosen one, and often is the one that we are brought in to kind of repatriate everything back up to the main brand.
So at the moment, what we're finding is we've got a couple of calls from a couple of clients because they're reviewing their portfolios and and during this time of pause, just reevaluating.
Yeah, taking an opportunity or using it as an opportunity to take a bit of a step back and look at some of those portfolio issues and structures.
So a couple of examples of that would be, for example, a company who had previously bought over a company and then kind of going, right, actually, we've got two brands here. Does this make sense? Is that the trigger for this?
Jules, you can talk in a minute, but this final bit for me on this is I'm amazed at the lack of awareness and understanding of the impact of this stuff that organizations have. I think that, they'll spend hundreds of millions, billions even of dollars buying organizations, but then with scant really regard of how they're going to integrate those brands and what role one brand is going to play over the other, what structure they're going to adopt, and most importantly, how they're going to integrate product portfolios and naming structures, which is where you get paralysis. And I think that I find it really interesting because all of these challenges are hidden, that they're not immediately evident in a P&L, and so these companies can exist in a sort of semi-paralyzed state for a number of years and not really be able to identify what the issues are. But they just bleed money, they bleed value, and that's what I find really interesting.
I think one of the things that we also see or have seen in the past is that quite often, like, decisions will be made in silos. So there will be, there's it's a bit of a false economy because a business will try and tackle something that's perceived to be a bit of a small problem first, but then kind of put to the side issues and inconsistencies that are going to essentially cause more problems further down the track. And I think you do get, and we work with a lot of businesses, and like you say, there isn't really a right or wrong answer when it comes to architecture and the right structure for a business to adopt. Simplicity will generally should win out every time, but it's rarely a perfect solution. But where we've worked with businesses where they kind of have this sort of hybrid solution, it's kind of at the outset, it can seem like the simplest way of tackling the architecture problem, but it becomes really confusing to navigate and complex to manage in the longer run as well, both from like you say, from an efficiency point of view, but more importantly for how you're from a customer facing perspective, but not only customer facing. I think one of the I don't know if it was the first, but certainly one of the first big ones that we worked on, it became abundantly clear that there was a real deep rooted issue when even their sales team couldn't navigate their own product portfolio.
That's a sign, isn't it?
It's a pretty clear indication that you've got some issues to tackle.
And it's a fascinating blend of kind of commercial acumen, emotional attachment to products and services or brands, and a creative challenge as well. There's a sort of creative angle, or how you logistically organize all these graphic things, how they come together, and it to me, it lives at the heart of the business.
But can we talk about Devro as a good example?
Well, that was an organization that had been grown through acquisition and duplicated businesses that did the same thing, duplicated organizations, and they hadn't consolidated the product portfolio.
So they had products that were the same, that existed in different regions, that were called different things and treated as brands, manufactured separately. So in terms of business efficiencies, part of the issue there was that there was, within each of the regions, there was that emotional attachment and probably an overinflated sense of equity that lived within those brands, as they were treating them as brands, but essentially they were products. And, there was a lot of strip it all back and sort of build it from the bottom up again, as well as...
It's that old phrase, hard pruning leads to strong growth, I think.
Oh,
is
very good. That's good.
Get that.
But it-
TM.
Right
TM that.
Right
TM,
usually.
the shark.
Right,
Yeah, I
right,
wish
right.
it a bit, you know. I'm going to get a name.
TM the shark.
We've got lots of names for you, don't you?
But yeah, I know. Yes, you do. But yeah, so I think, you know, that business had, you know, the guy that was running the organization knew that there was a challenge, and I think it's the extent to which they're prepared to grasp that nettle and have the difficult conversations, and because that is the challenge, and it's easy for us to sit here and say it.
Yeah.
I you know, once you're in that organization and inside the jar, I totally accept it. It's really hard.
But I think because this kind of links to one of the conversations we were having the other week about brand leadership and strong brand leadership needing to come and be driven from the top down. And I think the same applies here. There's no real understanding of what the end goal is. You know, it's much easier to map out the journey if you know the destination. Figure out your end goal and then develop a strategy that supports that. It doesn't all need to happen overnight. It doesn't need to happen straight away. But you end up, unless that comes from the top and there's a full there's alignment across the business in terms of what the goal is, then it's always going to be difficult to navigate and to implement change, because there will undoubtedly be differing opinions across the business and no one's ever going to be entirely happy.
So say you're a business at the moment, let's just throw some assumptions out there, and you've looked at your portfolio of products and companies that you may have bought and products that you have, and you're going to go through this hard pruning. What are the kind of key things that you would suggest, Chris and Julie, that you've got to kind of look out for and make sure that you're doing to tick the right box to make sure this is going to be a successful exercise?
What are our kind of watch outs? Okay, well, we've got a list.
Oh, I love a list. Fire away.
Okay, number one is about, sounds self-evident, but stakeholder consultation.
Right.
This is kind of what we just
underpins all of this.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm saying it's just professional courtesy to talk to people in the organization about how they feel about this stuff. And feeling is really important, because people feel really defensive about their brands. So engaging them in some of the difficult areas, talking to them about the scenario, being diplomatic, but being that third party with bringing objectivity. And helping to sort of contextualize the whole issue is really important. So if people feel if they're involved in the process, it makes the decisions and the downsizing of brands, if you like, as an expression, easier. Again, back to Devro, that's what happened there. You know, the fact that we were talking to people in different parts of the organization, in different businesses within the organization, they understood the issues, and it made it easier for them to accept, I think, in the long run.
So at the beginning of Devro, just for clarity, what would you, as a structure, what was that? Was that a house of brands, Devro?
It didn't have a name. It was a mess.
Right, okay. So
that's
it wasn't
what we would put in the hybrid bucket.
Right, okay. Hybrid away.
Yeah.
So when
it had just happened to them. That's what happens. These things just happen to organizations.
Right.
Suddenly they realize, I'm paralyzed. I don't know what is. It creeps up on them incrementally and slowly.
And even the master brand in that case wasn't clear, because they had different identities for different parts of the business that, and it was quite confused. So they were.
Mm-hmm. And this is what I find amazing, because the value that they're losing as an organization. Because, the thing is, I wrote the most recent article on the blog, is if a machine was broken and was down to 50% capacity, a man would turn up with a spanner and fix it pretty quickly, because it's bleeding value.
Yep.
This is the same thing. It's just hidden. It's abstract. And it's challenging. It's difficult, but there are people who can help you fix these problems and resolve them.
So that first stage of the stakeholder kind of consultation, that's almost a diplomatic mission.
Yeah.
And what are you trying to get out at the end of that? So the output of that stage is what?
It's I guess what you are doing is you are taking the temperature of feeling, of emotion, but also the value, the commercial value of some of the brands in the portfolio and how it all works. So there's all sorts of regional differences. You have to be aware that these things can't be tinkered with to too great an extent just on a regional level. There's always a global impact. It's understanding how that business works as well. So it's information gathering.
I think because one of the notes I had here, and just in terms of some of the common issues we see, and again, this is probably particularly prevalent in the B2B space, but where product-led businesses, you end up with products that are treated as brands because marketing teams within the organisation want to create these proprietary, and this is kind of to Chris's point about the naming conventions and naming protocols and product structures that are really important as part of this, because otherwise you end up with marketing teams potentially giving products proprietary names that then end up having us, developing an identity, because it feels like maybe the biggest innovation the brand will be launching that year, but it ends up getting treated as a sub-brand rather than just a product that lives within an organised portfolio, and it just kind of happens by accident, almost.
Which is kind
occasion.
Of leading on to point 2.
Chris, who's driving this show?
Sorry, Sharky boy. Sorry,
who's driving this show? So, Chris, thank you for that. If you were, what would be the second point on your list?
Jules, we just introduced it.
Let me tell you about the second point, which is about simplicity. And this, like we said at the start, there's rarely a perfect solution, but there are so many things at play, and like you say, things that will have decisions that have been made along the road for the right reason at the time. But these challenges are messy, and I think particularly when it comes to talking about merging portfolios and killing off brands and maybe streamlining product portfolios, that those are difficult decisions. And I think to Chris's point about the first point around stakeholder consultation being key to make sure everyone's on board with the decisions that are being made. But again, what we often see is that some of those decisions around which brands survive and which don't, which products survive and which don't, are made with we call it a kind of inside out bias, where it might be the right decision for the business, or it might seem like the right decision for the business at the time, but is it something that's making sense? Is it going to make sense for your customer? So there are kind of lots of political things at play there as well. And I think, and this is what we were saying earlier about, if you understand what the end goal is and understand what your strategy is to get there, then those decisions that you need to make along the way will be much clearer and much more straightforward.
And we have to start from the premise that there will be too many products. There are always too many products. We've never gone into a scenario going, do you know what?
You need a new product.
Otherwise I guess we wouldn't get hired. But there are always too many products, because it's actually a fun process, as Jules described, to create things and name things. It's quite good fun, and doing it for the wrong reasons, and it can become a habit, and it gets out of control quickly, and it leads to complexity, confusion, and a loss of value. And that's where we were talking last week, Stuart, about your Steve Jobs example when he came back. And again, I reference it in that piece about, he came back to Apple, didn't he, and realised there were far too many products. And he had a realisation when someone asked him what product he should recommend to a friend, and he couldn't work it out. It was too complex. And the long and the short of it is he rationalised their portfolio by about 70%. And that, when he first came back, they were losing money. Then the end of the next year, they posted about $300 million profit.
And I think the other interesting thing is what he did when he with cut products that were already in existence was he didn't really make a lot of layoffs. He actually diverted that resource to new product ranges like the iPhone and the iPod. And so there was a lot of rationalization and direction in there.
Clear-eyed thinking. And there are loads of examples of businesses beginning to grow, and once they rationalize some of their portfolio. I think it's Jill said, it's the complexity tax that consumers have to pay. They just go buy somewhere else.
More choice isn't always necessarily
they'll go buy somewhere else. So just make it simpler is always better.
And that number 3, who's going to take number 3 on the list?
Well, I mean, we just talked about Steve Jobs, but a better exponent of the art of clarity of vision you couldn't really get. But unless there is a clear vision and direction coming from the top of the organisation that they want to grasp this, I think that the projects will struggle and the tail can begin to wag the dog. So because the people who are in these organisations are wedded to the brands, always find an emotional reason not to kill it. And that strength and the signal that comes from the top has to be clear that we're on board, we're doing this to get to that point. So I think unless there is that strength of leadership, you get very influential stakeholders in different regions globally who will try and manipulate the process so that their products and brands stay. We've seen this happen to our huge frustration. And so agendas are met and products are kept, and it compromises the project and in our view, the kind of master brand strategy. It's a challenge. So I think clarity from the top is really important.
Next, what do you say the next
Yeah,
one
I
is,
think
Julie?
it's just an extension of that point, or why the next point is important, which is around objectivity and the fact that, hiring experts to manage this for you and work through the process with you is key, because it's the old, surgeon doesn't perform surgery on himself. There are so many things at play, from internal politics to power struggles, all the stuff that Chris just touched on, that businesses like us have more experience in this space in terms of engineering brand change within an organisation. So it's much harder to disagree with some recommendations which will be founded on, knowledge and insight as opposed to opinion. And that kind of having an objective partner in that will undoubtedly make the process much more straightforward. Not easy, but straightforward, a bit more straightforward.
Because you cannot participate in the process and facilitate the process within an internal organisation.
Who was it that said that?
The shark. Yeah. Right. Good. Never forget.
And I think that, again, that's underrated by clients, I think, that objectivity. I think sometimes they think they can force this stuff through, but they don't necessarily have the necessary kind of maybe expertise, experience, and maybe credibility in the eyes of some of their colleagues in regions to force the stuff through. And so it can get undermined quite quickly. So sometimes we say to them, our clients, let us deal with these meetings, because
I've not done, but you can see that even at meetings that I've been at with the marketing managers, got everybody in to kind of talk about the plan for the next year, and then they start to facilitate that meeting. And somebody will come up with an idea, and the marketing manager just go, no, we can't do that. And you're going, well, what's the point of the meeting? And why, so to actually have somebody independent to kind of stand up there and ask open, stupid, naive, sometimes objectionable questions is probably the right place to go, so that everybody feels part of the process. It ties nicely back into your stakeholder consultation at the top point. But once you kind of got that and you've kind of delivered some findings, there's another point 5.
So this is about the fact that you have to go into these processes and understand that change is going to be inevitable, but it is manageable. And again, back to some of the emotional views around brands in organizations. Every one of these projects we've done, we hear the same thing, which is, we can't change. I understand what you're saying. Our business is different. We can't change these brands or products because our consumers are so used to them. It would be detrimental to the business to do so. And at which point, you have to be nice and be diplomatic, but also point out the fact that consumers of any type and any shape or form are able to deal with change and manage. It's up to the organisation to deal with the change program, not just flick a switch one day and the product that was previously called X is now called Y. It's a program of change. So, of course, people can deal with change. It's about being prepared to accept it and then managing that process. So it's a very common phrase we hear. We can't do that. We're different. And I mean, we've seen it. In fact, Stuart, you've been involved in it. Even when there is sort of empirical evidence to demonstrate the fact that consumers aren't that aware, bothered. They refuse to kind of accept it, which plays back to the objectivity point as well, that you need someone objective to point out these issues. But they're very tightly held, these emotional
And
things.
a lot of those things are down to, that's my bonus on the line. Because if there's going to be change, you're hoping that the marketing department or whatever department that is going to be doing that education process with the customer is going to do a good job. And it's easy just to sell the old thing again without having to explain it's, there will be friction in that, but it's manageable, and there's people there just scared of losing their bonus.
And that's why I think, again, as an approach, it needs to be tackled across the business. It can't just live within. Then this is something we've talked about in the past as well, about things just living within the marketing function. How will the sales team, like you say, facilitate those conversations with consumers? How will the product development team tackle next phase of whatever? It's kind of, it can't just be an exercise that's performed by the marketing team. And I think Devro was a good example there as well, because I think they had a program of change and managed it really well, with not only with customers, but with their individual regions. So their corporate marketing team they were operating in 6 regions at the time, and spent time with each of those individual marketing functions, because they had regional marketing managers, to talk through the process. Once the new structure was, basically once a new brand was ready to go live, and got everyone on board and spent time with the regional teams and and also allowed for a period of feedback and evaluation. So when it came to specific challenges that may exist within some of the regions, some of that's identified obviously up front in the stakeholder consultation process, but some of the more practical stuff comes out further down the line. And the fact that they made that, were able to manage that post-launch as well as in the run-up to, I think made it a much more... and it wasn't, again, that it's not an overnight thing. These processes of, implementing change, that was probably a 12 to 18th month process for Devro by the time everything changed
You're
over.
so right. A strategy for change is one thing, but it's nothing without implementation. And doing it well, if it's done well, like you say, the main brand can gain a real halo effect, a benefit of it from it too.
But once you actually deliver those recommendations, as we say, the challenge then is, change is inevitable, but it's manageable. But then what sometimes you get is the reality of the politics, and then you get...
You get a half-shut knife.
Yeah, you get a half-shut knife.
So this is the next one. At all costs, avoid a partial political change, paralysis. It's worse than doing nothing. Yeah, and again, it picks up on a couple of the points we made before about vision and clarity and leadership and things. But there are no perfect examples of this stuff work. Every project's different, and compromises will undoubtedly need to be made. It's how they're done and when that will determine whether the thing is a success or not. But to half do it or to concede to too many requests from the regions or different brands or products, if it begins, quite quickly it can chip away at the integrity of the whole thing. And then it becomes a question of, is it actually worth
doing?
Are we going to create more confusion? So yeah, it's a challenge. And Stuart, again, we've sat in meetings where the belief is that they're changing a regional offering. And as we said, the world we live in now is global. And it's particularly in digital. You and I spent a lot of time looking at mapping product portfolios for webs, basically through the website.
Yep.
It's forgotten about.
Yeah.
And then if it's not dealt with at that time, then they'll then try and create a sort of hackneyed solution around the website to deal with the inconsistencies, and it's a ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's another sharkism is start, or maybe it's not, maybe it should. It says start with the asking what's the risk of doing nothing. If the likelihood is you're going to end up with that sort of change paralysis, then are you better to invest nothing actually and stick with what you've got, which is always an option as well.
And it's our job to keep the client honest in that space and recognize when that's beginning to happen and help push back. And sometimes we can be quite difficult about that, but it's our job to do that.
And I'd just like to say I like the use of the word sharkism. Thanks, Julie.
It actually wasn't a sharkism, it was actually mine.
It was a Lumsdenism. It is totally a Lumsdenism.
I'm still getting a name.
It's a Lumsdenism, so we're there. So the next thing, and the kind of last big point on this, really, which is the one you've maybe got to understand at the beginning, but I think it's right that we've left it at the end, is arguably the most important.
Is that there will be pain, undoubtedly. There will be pain, even when you have done all of these things that we've just advised and are aware of all the issues that exist within the business. Even the best projects will not be without their challenges. But I think it's acknowledging that and choosing to lean into it and have all the difficult conversations and appreciate that hard pruning, as Chris calls it, will likely lead to strong growth, but it won't come without difficult decisions being made and challenges, along the way.
And it's the clients that recognize that at the beginning of the process. I think a lot of them, some at the beginning will agree, yeah, it's going to be difficult, yeah, but actually without having maybe experienced it or recognized just how hard it's going to be. It's the ones that have perhaps done it before. Because we're talking about in your average sort of marketeer's life, I don't think this happens that often. It might happen maybe once or twice in their career. I don't know, I'm guessing. But for us, we're doing it all the time. So we kind of know where the pitfalls are. And, the ones that have done it before have still got the scars, and they recognize the issues. So it's about that sense of, are you going to lean into this because it's going to be better for you in the long term?
And when you're doing your stakeholder consultation, do you mention the fact that the process, the journey that you're on, that people are on, is going to be painful?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you bring that.
There's one in the books at the moment, isn't there, where it's they simply can't continue down the path they're on with their mixed portfolios, and they've added another client, another organization into the mix, there's significant pain at the end of this journey for them, or not even at the end now. Yeah, and it's whether they're willing to, how much you do now versus tinkering around the edges. It's back to one of those other points. But it's so important that the senior people recognize that, I have to invest significant amount of marketing dollars in this now to cauterize the bleeding, because, in the longer term, or do I just leave it? And can we manage, at this point, the risk of doing nothing, what will happen if I leave it? It may be that some issues will eventually resolve themselves. Brands die, product ranges are naturally killed, but it feels like it's always better to manage that on the front foot.
You can tell it's Chris's favourite subject, can't you?
I know,
can you?
He's loving it.
It's an interesting one. It is an interesting one, though, because every project is different, because every client's challenges are slightly different. And even, more often than not, even as you, and this is kind of tied to the last point as well, even when you set out knowing what you're trying to achieve, undoubtedly there will be things that
that's someone now.
Somebody's
I'm not letting the brands go. No, that's a protest outside.
There will be things that crop up. Things will come along that you didn't actually necessarily even see at the outset, which is, just adds additional
things you don't
confusion
know
to the mix. And you never set out in a project like this knowing everything. So it's
unknown unknowns.
There you go. Don't know what you don't know.
What a way to leave it.
Rumsfeldian.
That was a beautiful way to leave it. Well, thank you for...
Did we get Chris's joke?
No, we didn't, because we decided to swear at me instead.
Okay.
The shark was the joke.
Shark was the joke.
I'm so glad that we're laughing at Stuart today. You are an idiot.
If people could see how you're walking after a weekend of playing cricket, they would be laughing at you too.
Don't mock the afflicted.
Don't mock the afflicted. Guys, you two are the best.
Fun.
Bye-bye.
YTB.
Bye.